Next up, we have a very first panel discussion on modernization to hyper-converged cloud infrastructure. I'd like to invite on the dais our moderator, Mr. Mohammed Hamed, who will be the Chief Technical Officer at Ceramica Platino Group. We also have, welcome Mr. Mohammed. We also have Mr. Khaled Koro, who's the Corporate Director of IT at Chiva-Som International Health Resorts. He'll also be joined by Mr. Fateh Abu Hijleh, who's the Head of IT at Darwish Engineering, and Bernard Rono, who's the Head of ICT at Kenya Tea Packers Limited, along with Anshul Srivastav, who's the co-founder and CEO at Proton Insurance. And we'll also have Mr. Andreas Louca, the Principal International Subsidiaries and Cybersecurity Audit at QNB Group. Dr. Ahmed, stage is all yours for the next 45 minutes.
Mr. Mohammed. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I think he's facing some issues with the mic, so let's give it another minute.
Gentlemen, maybe we could start off with some of the questions. We went through the discussion in the group with regards to questions that will be addressed during the discussion in the panel. Would it be okay that we kick off possibly with the first round of questions? Would that be okay? Because of the introduction, maybe Dr. Khaled will join us again and we can...
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll first start off with Mr. Khaled. We were talking about what are the advantages of hyperconverged cloud?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tex Event, for organizing and the team organizing this event. So I will just be quick because I know we are running out of time. So I'm sure, of course, you probably know by now that hyperconverged infrastructure, or what we call it HCI, is the next critical milestone in our ID roadmap. Everywhere in the world, people are looking at it. So by combining processing compute units, storage, and networking into a single software-defined system, HCI promises, of course, for everyone, lower cost, simplified IT management, and agile storage performance. So mainly one of the top advantages for enterprises and mid-sized businesses who are about to choose HCI solutions or going to organize the hyper-converged public cloud, people are looking at speed of deployment, cost saving, simplified management, scalable flexibility, and smart acquisitions. So companies are gradually embracing a cloud-based strategy to increase market responsiveness and flexibility. So the cloud-first approach refers to a cloud-like experience consisting of on-demand metered consumption of IT infrastructure, whether on public cloud or, of course, on our on-premises data centers. And you know, a lot of us that we were running before on-premises, when we were moving to hybrid cloud with any type of solution we had, we were looking, of course, what are the advantages we can, of course, adapt to or we can gain. So the swiftly evolving agreement among the technology executives or all of us and, of course, the retailers from or partners of others retailers like Microsoft, VMware, etc., has led to the rise of hybrid IT. With the flexibility to deploy applications, databases, or on-premises or on public cloud, hybrid IT can migrate them around to any location that meets security requirements and best delivers performance, availability, and of course, costs. Leading IT analysts, IT team members estimate a significant amount of technology investment will be associated with hybrid cloud capabilities. And yes, traditionally, application development teams and IT operation teams have attained excellence in silos, which tend to reduce launch speed and add complexity. So the new hybrid IT module we're looking at, or HCI, needs to bring these two teams closer for enhanced collaboration that leads to a seamless production workflow and improved business competitiveness. So in a nutshell, what the outcome, the summary of it, of the advantage of HCI, you need to choose who's the best vendor for HCI to assist you in doing so, and having a well-defined planning and strategy of implementation, which this gives you the summary about HCI. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Khaled. I can see that Mohammed is joined back. Are you there? Can you hear us? Mr. Hamed? Okay, we'll go on to Mr. Fateh for now with the first question for Mr. Fateh being, why hyperconverged?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for this invitation. Why hyperconverged? There are so many reasons for this. In the earlier stages, we were dealing with multiple components. You need to deal with the storage vendor, with the network vendor, with the processing power vendor. Now, hyperconverged put everything for you together, and you will be dealing with only one vendor. So this makes it simpler for you to deal with and to achieve your target. Plus, earlier you needed to integrate all these components yourself in order to ensure the performance. Now, when you get a hyper-converged solution, this assurance is already guaranteed by the vendor himself. So you need to make sure that you pick the right vendor to support your needs based on your needs, and these benefits are already there. In addition to that, then at later stage, this solution as a solution is available in the cloud now. So this will save you from the hardware purchases, will save you from dealing with multiple vendors for different components. Now you are dealing with only one supplier from the cloud, and it is no hardware. You just have a subscription. This also, the cloud version of this service gives you the easier way to scale up or scale down. So at any point of time, if you need more resources, then it is easy to change your subscription. This plays a major role in your cost, because if you buy the hardware, then it is there. But with the subscription module, you can scale up and scale down as you need. So one last benefit is being in the cloud, then it is easier for you to reach. Your data center requires certain measures in order to be reachable from anywhere. But being in the cloud with certain security measures, you can reach it easily. So these are a few of the benefits of the hyperconverged.
Thank you for that, Fateh. The next, I can see again, Mr. Hamed is here. Are you with us, Mr. Hamed? He still got some issues on his audio. We'll move on to Bernard now. Bernard, how does HCI make IT teams more productive?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. From Nairobi, Kenya, we say Jambo. I hope you're all well. Well, you know, the HCI really is at the heart of the digital transformation. I come from the manufacturing setup. I work with the largest tea packaging company here in Kenya. And one of the things that HCI has been able to do for us in our ICT team has been to allow us focus on the critical aspects of the digital transformation. When you deploy HCI technology, it really takes the headache out of IT teams because you know it's fast in deployment. You get unprecedented scalability and flexibility. You're able to have turnkey infrastructure, but most importantly, then with excellent performance. you can really focus on digitally transforming any entity that you work with. We've been able to deploy robust, massive Salesforce automation projects through HCI. What you also get with HCI is reliability. Every business requires reliable enterprises. Kenya just completed its national elections, and the election system ran on fantastic HCI infrastructure that had very minimal interruptions. And every entity, whether government or private companies, requires that kind of reliability if you're going to provide reliable services to your target customers. So with superior performance comes with a lot of scalability. Traditional way of deploying systems has been on-prem, less converged setups. But now with HCI, you're able to do more with less, really. And from where we sit, from where I stand, I think it's very important that HCI is completely adopted and embraced by IT teams across the world. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Bernard. Next, we've got Anshul. What are the advantages of modernizing IT with converged and hyperconverged infrastructure?
Yeah, so many of my fellow panelists, including Khaled, Fateh, and Bernard, has talked about the advantages and the way the hyper-converged infrastructure can be implemented. But yes, first, number one, I would say that the kind of flexibility you get, it's actually unparalleled flexibility in terms of implementing and deploying the HCI. Deployments are way too simplified and easy. Movement in terms of the flexibility is definitely much there. Wherein, if you look at it, you will find the way you want to ramp up the infrastructure or ramp down the infrastructure comes in, and that's the fluid part of it. It lowers the cost. And personally, when I have implemented and I have seen while budgeting versus the OPEX and the CAPEX part of it, I've seen the cost has definitely toned down and lowered. And over a period of time, you will see that benefit coming in with HCI. Now, another benefit you can see is you can do more with less. I mean, you can resize, undersize your HCI, and you can do much more things, because when you do something on your data center, it's always oversized. An oversized here means it's the capacity, either you are living on less than 20% capacity, wherein you are going to scale up when the hardware arrives, when you're having your own data center. But when you are going in for your HCI, you can resize whatever size fits, and you can do much more with less. As far as the operational part of it, HCI has given a massive scale in your operations, wherein you can define your IT operations, your technology operations, and redefine, because then you can set up much better processes to take care of the business problems more than the technology problems. You can maximize your resources. One of the key benefit you have for hyperconverged, and you can definitely, for sure, you can make future-proof IT. These are the benefits, I believe, of HCI you have. All and over and all above, it gives a flexibility in terms of the way you strategize with your business. Earlier, you're dumped with most of the time solving problems of your infrastructure 80% of the time. Now it's reverse. 20% of the time you are defining, and 80% of the time you are working with business to solve the business problems rather than technology problems.
Right. Thank you, Anshul. Mr. Andreas, what are the main IT risk considerations when moving to cloud-based infrastructure?
Well, as Anshul said before, as he was finishing, he was saying one of the main things you had to do before going on the cloud is to 80% of the time was to fix problems. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that because I come from a risk management perspective, okay, in a large organization, and most large organizations, even smaller ones, they have to manage their operational risk. It means that if something could go wrong, it happens more frequently when you have your own internal systems and your own infrastructure. And as everybody says, it costs quite a bit to keep them up to the level required by the business. So, you know, you're looking at the continuity of the service, uptime and so forth, and performance, and also looking at security. And obviously, with the advantages of going and having less problems on the cloud, it means that you don't have the risk of something of these interruptions to the service happening, or it doesn't happen very frequently in any case. And essentially, everybody talked about the flexibility of hyper-converged infrastructure, the lower cost, scalability, the ease of management, and so forth. Essentially, what it translates to in terms of risk is that we are transferring the risk from internally in the organization. We're transferring to the service provider, and in doing so, it means that we have to change the way we operate as a company, as an organization, to manage the service provider and ensure that the service provided by this converged infrastructure is according to certain expectations. So one of the risk considerations is to move away from the problems, in other words, operational risk, and moving into outsourcing risk, IT outsourcing risk. Okay, in certain industry sectors, there's legislation and also regulation that defines on how to do that. But essentially, what it means is that as an organization, we have to have some team internally. In this case, it could be in IT or somewhere else, which, let's say, defines, first of all, you know, everything is based on an SLA, for example, okay? We have to define the expected service levels. The service levels have to be monitored. And these have to be, let's say, defined in such a way that they set the expectations that we have by going into a hyper-converged infrastructure service provision. Okay. Essentially, this is the risk, as I said, is moving from an operation, in other words, fixing operational problems internally, to managing the provider of this service on the cloud. And obviously, like others said, it includes the operational and business continuity aspect, but also there's a security or cybersecurity aspect. And someone before said that this means changing our data centers, the way we access this cloud service, and so forth.
So, thank you, Mr. Andreas. There's also a second part. I would like to start the second question of yours straight away behind this, because I think there's a connection to where we're talking here. What are some of the internal changes that organizations will need to effect better to manage these cloud service providers?
Well, going on from what I said before, a number of organizations, especially large ones, they have in the past used outside vendors to outsource, in quotes, certain internal activities and so forth. Now, depending on which business area uses these outside areas, each area in the business or the organization, they usually have their own way of managing their own vendor. Okay. we find that as we're moving into more frequent use of cloud-based service provision, that it makes sense to centralize all this centrally in the organization, to have a separate team. In other words, up to now, we have IT managing its own vendors. We had other business sides of the business, like manufacturing maybe, that may be managing their own way, their own vendors and so forth. Going to be able to guarantee that the organization gets the expected service, we have to have a central framework of so-called third-party risk management. Okay, and third party is anybody, any external vendor providing a service to the company. In this case, we're talking about hyper-converged infrastructure on the cloud. There's a service provider providing that. There's an SLA for that. All that, how to negotiate the contract, the SLA with a vendor, how to define what is included in the contract and everything. It can either be done by, in this case, IT or some other central department in the organization because eventually they will need to have, let's say, the knowledge to be able to manage this long term. And since we're talking about technology, it's not a core competency of IT, for example, to be able to manage the commercial aspects of the vendor or the service levels and so forth. And that's the major change that one organization has to make, is to centralize the management of the vendors, and more importantly, not just the management, but monitoring of service level provisions. You know, outages. Is a vendor, is a service on the cloud providing the performance that we expected? How many outages did we have? Uptime, cyber incidents, security incidents. How do we protect our customers' data? Depending on which jurisdiction the company is operating, there are different data protection laws. Okay, all these things, all these aspects, it's better if they're managed centrally in order to be able to make sure that what we are paying for is what we expect.
Got it. Thank you very much for the thoughts, Andreas. Coming back to Khaled, in your view, what are the challenges that an IT professional can face when it comes to moving to cloud modernization with HCI?
Thank you. So, Andreas has spoken a very main important aspect, but also to add on Andreas, and of course, when we think of a change, it tends to involve progressing from one state to another, but in technology, change is more often than not additive. This creates considerable challenge for IT professionals. Data centers have evolved significantly, over the last 30 years as the new technology and practices has entered the scene. Generally, these have not been wholesale replacement, but instead have been additions to what currently we are managing. So HCI is the last addition that must be incorporated and managed alongside other technologies. So this is the big challenge that comes. So as an example, software development practices have been advancing since the beginning, with methods changing according to new software techniques and new requirements from customers. The latest is, I'm sure everyone is using it, DevOps deployment methodology, which enhances collaboration between the responsible sectors for different segments of the development life cycle. I'm going to give an example very close. Dynamics 365, which is being used by Microsoft, is a financial system. Its architecture has moved from monolithic to microservices, and deployment has gone from bare metal to virtual machines, and now we are in the era of containerized workloads. So you can apply all your work, everything in the DevOps, and of course, apply everything there and test it, and then migrate it to live. So this is one of the things that people, they might find challenges in doing so because they are looking for a technical team to do it, or the technical capabilities to perform it. This alone are not singular outcomes for success. Of course, they are additive. It's not about deploying one solution, but about how you can support a multitude of architectures and processes. New systems of innovation must also coexist with the existing systems of record. delivering core businesses application with scale-up requirements. So the main question here comes out is, this is the challenge of data center evolution. How do you support existing platforms while also adopting new revolutionary solutions like HCI? There are finite hours in the day, and staff and budgets aren't growing significantly. And because of COVID, what we have been going through, how can we free up time and resources to support the new systems for innovation? So I'm going to bring the closest best practices that we've heard from other colleagues in the IT sector, include focusing on eliminating your steps from day zero to production and bringing in automation to improve time to production and reduce human errors. Automation has been something so much rising. A lot of companies, one is my company, which is Chiva-Som International Health Resorts, we are focusing so much on automation to eliminate lots of manual processes, human interactions, lower down the latencies, lower down human errors. So when it comes to technology and of course IT with HCI, abstracting the management complexity across converged infrastructure or hyper-converged infrastructure or virtual cloud foundation from VMware to Nutanix to Amazon, etc., allows you to operate a more focused team using less software, reducing management complexity and improving productivity, delivering management capability throughout the stack from VMs down to hardware components, allows you to make informed decisions based on the health of your entire platform. So this provides a modular approach best suited for the hybrid cloud deployments, but it's not just infrastructure. It's the workload service level objectives across your multi-cloud platform with seamless mobility across traditional storage, HCI, and public cloud. So this enables you to place the workload in the optimum environment that fits the profile for performance, availability, cost, and security needs, as all my colleagues have mentioned earlier.
Right. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Khaled. Mr. Fateh, is it a threat for IT executives?
Well, it depends. It depends on how you look at it. To me, when you look to the hyper-converged solutions provided, it is a challenge for the IT executives, IT people to upscale their knowledge, to upscale their skills, to venture in a new area of technology. From the other side, you can look at it as an opportunity, because when you push, as my colleagues mentioned, when you push workloads to the vendor side, now they are taking care of all the components all together with one vendor. And if it is being in the cloud, this is even better for you. Then you will have more time to engage with the business in order to cater their needs, to provide them with the better technologies, rather than firefighting in the data center for issues here and there. So it actually depends on the way you look at it. If you upscale your skills and knowledge, this will be a good opportunity for you. It's not a threat.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. Fateh. Now, coming to the next question for you, Bernard. What databases, applications, and workloads do companies run on hyperconverged cloud infrastructure?
I think thank you very much. Listening to Khaled and Fateh, I couldn't help but notice that Fateh's first answer was, it depends. I'm about to echo that as well. But really, HCI has the potential to run virtually any traditional on-prem application hosted in the cloud. But where I've seen this very applicable has been around virtual desktop infrastructure, whether you're in a virtualized environment, are you on end computing, and some of these technologies that makes an environment more seamless. I've seen HCI very effective in load balancing. So if you run a couple of applications, you're able to decide how much resources would be required in specific applications. So that the element of scalability comes into work very well, whether you are hosting a massive national database that has a lot of transactions in and out. The scalability that comes with HCIs allows you then channel the right resources to the right applications. And yes, I'll echo what Khalid said, that HCIs allows very robust DevOps setup that is ideal for testing and deployment, and you're able to simulate a real environment before pushing in a production environment. But where this has worked for our case really has been around data backups, restoration, data recovery, disaster recovery. If you desire a fantastic DR as a service solution, then HCI with any of the vendors you go for would work very well for you. What would be underlying is the why. And I think we've pretty much covered that prior. If it really allows you to run a robust turnkey infrastructure, where the traditional way of provisioning servers 10 years ago was tedious. You had to scope and spec and hopefully hope that whatever server you buy, HP ProLiant Gen 6 maybe then would work well once the application is loaded. But with HCI, you're actually able to test on the go, and it's become very, very robust and scalable. And when you post the question to Fateh whether this is a threat to the IT executives, without a doubt, yes. If you don't upskill and upscale in terms of your skill set, then obviously then within your teams or within my teams, we've had to redeploy our workforce. If you had a number of people managing the data center, you don't need to do that again. You can actually redirect that workforce to focus on very critical DevOps processes within the digital transformation framework. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Bernard. And for the last question of the panel, it goes to Anshul. How does hyperconverged cloud infrastructure solve data center challenges that traditional or converged infrastructure cannot?
Okay. First, let me go back to the question which Fateh was answering. Thank you, Fateh, for answering that. It may be a threat, but I would say that it's not a threat if the decision maker in IT is not considering this as a threat. Means the person is having board approval, retirement plan ready and signed off for next 10 years. So it is a threat, and if you are not considering also as a threat, then I mean your decision making is not influenced by the things which are happening within your competitive landscape, the industry you are in, and you are not getting influenced by what your team is looking at you to build up the scalable IT. Now, coming back to the things which a data center, what HCI can offer, and a data center cannot overcome the challenges of a data center. See, HCI can make decision makers not waste time in researching more products to ensure compatibility. That's one, and I think Bernard had a brief mention of it. Here, the IT vendor is a single vendor from procurement. So through workload deployment, components are pre-integrated and pre-configured, avoiding overheads that comes with acquiring, integrating, and implementing traditional infrastructure. So the components are actually built up. It's a stack which comes in on it. And the best part is HCI software-defined capabilities redefine the entire infrastructure, the way you manage it. I mean, whether it's resource allocation, whether it's workload deployments, or managing the environment, it automatically carries out daily operations such as resource provisioning and load balancing. So all that comes with it, which a typical offline or rather built up data center cannot do that. So those are my take on that.
Fantastic. Thank you for the last thoughts, Anshul. And once again, I apologize for the disruption in the beginning. I think our moderator had kind of lost his access to audio connection there. Apologies for the disruption in the beginning, but thank you all for your inputs and your thoughts. From what my takeaway at least has been some of the advantages of HCI is some words that at least I'm not a very technical person, but scalability, flexibility, robustness, and reliability has come out of this conversation to me as the highlights of HCI. So I hope we'll be summarizing this in our post-show report in more detail and sending out to all of you. But thank you once again for taking the time to be here and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Nice being here.